Okay, so I hope you can see my slides. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Amin. And yeah, thank you so much again for the invitation. I'm very happy that I get the opportunity to present at the DTX research talk. And the paper that I'm going to present today is joint work with Fabrizio Giotti and Lars Hornhof. And it's very important to state this right away because it's a regulatory paper. So we focus on a regulation which is not yet into force and was also not designed for online labor markets per se. But as you will see, our results point towards the idea that it might not be a bad idea to also consider implementing it in these markets. And before I dive into the motivation why we actually focus on lock-in effects in online labor markets, I think it's also very important to first generally talk about online labor markets, because it's an increasing markets. However, it's still a very, very small market. So in these markets, businesses and individuals, they basically outsource a task to a geographically dispersed workforce through an open call. And the markets generally are very, very diverse. So there are some markets where workers need to have a specific skill set. So for example, they need to have programming skills, or you also have to have knowledge in graphic design. And there are also other markets where workers do not need to have a specific skill set. And these are so-called micro-task platforms. So very easy and repetitive tasks. And one prominent example that you will also hear more often during my presentation is the platform Amazon Mechanical Turk. So it's one of the leading platforms, leading microtask platforms in the world. And research that focuses specifically on the working conditions of workers in online labor markets shows that very often workers face precarious working conditions. So there's no social security, there's no pension plan, no sick pay. And especially on microtask platforms, workers actually also earn wages that are far below the minimum wage. So this is very, very important that you also know that many workers in these markets, they already face precarious working conditions. And we also came across another challenge that workers might face, namely that workers might face high switching costs that lock them inside a labor platform. And one potential reason are platform-specific reputation mechanisms. Now, while these mechanisms are also very important because they address market inefficiencies that arise because of asymmetric information, they might actually prevent the workers to transfer their ratings from one platform to another, and therefore also relax platform competition. Now, just consider the following case. We all want to become online workers now. So typically when we register on the platform, we want to have a good reputation, because a good reputation determines the access we get to more and or better paid tasks in the future. So we build up a really good reputation, and then at some point we want to also work on another platform. It could be either the case that another platform offers more tasks, or that we're simply not in line with the new terms and conditions on this specific platform. But what happens in the current scenario is that if we decide to switch from one platform to another, we have to rebuild our reputation from scratch. And building up a good reputation typically takes time. And when we specifically focus on the literature on lock-in effects, I mean, the results are ambiguous, but there seems to be a tendency that before consumers, or in this case, online workers, are locked in, there's a fierce ex-ante competition. But as soon as consumers or online workers are locked in, there's a more exposed competition. So actually, competition decreases, and since workers or also consumers are locked in, this can be actually capitalized by platforms. And research that specifically focuses on online labor markets stresses, okay, workers very often face precarious working conditions, but given these platform-specific reputation mechanisms, these might also make them more vulnerable to platform capitalization. So for example, if a platform charges a fee or increases a fee. So what can we actually do to mitigate the lock-in effects? throughout the past years, regulatory authorities have introduced so-called data privacy laws that all allow for data portability. And the most prominent example is the General Data Protection Regulation, especially Article 20, the right to data portability. And the general notion is that individuals should have the right to easily export their data from a platform and easily import it onto another one without any difficulty. And the objective is, on the one hand, of course, to enhance the data ownership, but on the other hand, also increase platform competition by reducing the switching costs. And I already said it right in the beginning that under the current legislations, reputation data typically does not fall under the scope, especially not under the scope of Article 20, because ratings and reviews are not personal data. So the workers do not provide them themselves, but they're provided then by the contractors. And in our paper, we, on the one hand, wanted to analyze, okay, can platforms actually capitalize on login effects in online labor markets? And we also wanted to more thoroughly analyze how do workers actually react to platform capitalization, and can reputation portability also a very good tool to basically, on the one hand, make them less vulnerable to this capitalization, but on the other hand, also increase the working conditions. This is what we do. So both theoretically and experimentally, we basically analyze the effect of platform pricing on worker switching behavior. And we do it in two policy regimes. The one regime is the status quo. So all the online labor platforms have their own reputation mechanism. So if a worker decides to switch from A to B, then they basically have to rebuild the reputation from scratch. In another scenario, we consider a policy regime which has mandatory reputation portability. So you can think about a third-party provider basically taking care about the reputation, meaning that if worker builds up a rating on platform A, this rating will be automatically transferred to platform B. And as I already said, I mean, it's already very interesting to see how the switching behavior changes in these different policy regimes, but we also wanted to analyze more thoroughly, why do online workers actually switch when the platform increases or introduces a fee? And we considered two switching behaviors. One is the monetary motive, so meaning I only switch to another platform if I can earn more money on the other platform. However, it might also be the case that some workers might have some fairness preferences. So the platform charges a fee, and because I perceive this fee as unfair, I would be even willing to switch to a platform where I would earn less on the other platform. As I already said, we have a theory model, so let me briefly outline this. And it's also very important to know that in our experimental setting is basically what I'm going to talk about now in our theory model. So in general, our model is based on a variation on managerial incentives by Holmström. And we consider an online labor market with two platforms. The workers always have to opt for one platform. So multi-homing is not allowed. So they have to either work on platform A or platform B. Workers and the market, they do share a common prior belief about the workers' talent. So what we mean by that is that we wanted to rule out everything that is related to asymmetric information, so that the workers actually already knows about their talent. And this basically rules it out, that we say, okay, the moment the worker registers on an online labor platform, they also have to learn about their talent. And they do that by basically building up reputation. So learning about the worker's talent is symmetrical between the worker and also the platform. The workers, they do care about their future reputation, because the better their reputation, the more they can earn in the future. And what we are specifically interested in is how the switching behavior changed in basically at the time the platform introduces a fee. So as in our theory model, and it will be the same case for our experiment, that the platform at some point, at some time K, will basically introduce a fee, and this fee has to be paid by the worker. And we are very much interested in the switching decision of the worker at this time K. So if we consider a policy regime that has no reputation portability, so basically the status quo, you can see in our model, we consider the revenues and also the effort cost. And now very, very intuitively, if I am a worker and I start on platform percentage or platform A, and I have built up a good reputation, if the platform now charges a fee, and that I have to pay, I would only be willing to switch to another platform if I could earn more money in the scenario where I have pure monetary motives. Which basically means that in a policy regime without reputation portability, it's actually possible that there might be switching costs if I am a good worker. So workers will be more likely to stay and to pay the fee as long as they can basically earn more on the same platform. However, as I already said, is that not all workers might have these pure monetary motives. It is also possible that by introducing a fee, some workers might perceive this fee increase as unfair. And we capture basically this additional disutility by adding a negative parameter delta to our theory model. And now, depending on the tolerance level towards the fee, the worker would be even willing to switch to another platform, even if switching would indicate a wage loss in a scenario when the worker would have these pure fairness preferences. Now, what would happen if we considered a policy regime with mandatory reputation portability? Theoretically, we make two assumptions, namely that the platforms are symmetric, and as I said, the transfer is really mandatory. Then, since the two platforms would basically compete for worker, Bertrand competition would follow. So they would basically set a fee equal to marginal cost. And in such a scenario, we assume that workers will switch more often since the switching costs are virtually nullified. Okay, so let's dive into our experimental design. So we collected data through an online laboratory experiment in the field, which is really nice because in the field means that we analyze switching behavior of real online workers, and our lab environment is necessary because we study an artificial policy change. So given the current scenario, there are no platforms in the online labor markets that actually offer reputation portability. We collected our data from the platform Amazon Mechanical Turk, and our experiment relies on a 2x2x2 between and within subject design. So with a probability of 50%, the workers were basically assigned to one of the two regimes. Either they were allowed to transfer their ratings to the other platform or they were not. Then, in order to study monetary motives and fairness preferences, we considered two markets. In the one market, the platforms are perfectly identical, meaning they charge the exact same fee at the exact same time. And in the other market, only the platform the worker currently works on charges a fee, while the other platform will never charge a fee. And finally, during the experiment, the workers were either confronted with a fee or they were not confronted with a fee. Okay, very brief information also about our procedure. So we posted our study on Amazon Mechanical Turk. So basically the worker were able to find the study in their list of so-called hits. And if they decided to participate, they were redirected to our lab environment that we programmed with Unipark. They received the instructions and they were told that they are assigned the role of online workers that enter a new online labor market that consists of two platforms. And in general, the experiment lasted 7 to 10 rounds, and each round followed the exact same structure. So before the first round started, the workers first picked a platform, and they were always able to switch after the end of every round. Each round consisted of one task. It was a real effort task that consisted of counting zeros out of a series of zeros and ones. And keep in mind, we conducted the experiment on a microtest platform, which is known for easy and repetitive tasks. The workers then received a rating for task completion, and the better the average rating in the given round, the more they could earn in the next round. And to induce the possibility of being locked in first, we decided that a random mechanism should start introducing a fee not before round 4. So before round 4, there was no fee. And after the experiment, of course, we also ask participants to fill in a questionnaire. Okay, so the very first important finding that we have is, of course, that we wanted to analyze, so can actually platforms capitalize on lock-in effects in the absence of reputation portability, and what does a portability regime that mandates portability, how does that affect switching behavior? Let me guide you through this figure. So what we generally do, because of course we also do a balance check, and it's mostly balance, and our results also do not change if we include all our control variables. So today it's basically an easy comparison, a means comparison. And what we do is basically we analyze, or we compare the switching behavior in the rounds before the fee introduction with the round the fee was introduced. If we consider a scenario without portability on the left-hand side, you can see that switching increased from 18 to round about 23%. And this increase is not statistically significant. So yes, in the absence of reputation portability, platforms can capitalize on lock-in effects. However, if we consider a regime with portability, switching increases from 31 to 54%, and this increase is statistically significant. And we also did a Fisher's exact test where we basically looked at, okay, the 5 percentage points increase and the 24 percentage points increase, the difference is also statistically significant, which leads us to the main result that, okay, if we consider a mandatory reputation portability regime, that significantly increases switching behavior and, of course, reduces the chances that workers incur platform fees. I already talked about the motives to switch platforms, and let me also again guide you through this figure. So what we here see is how many people switched and around the fee was introduced. And as you can see, 78%, so the majority of workers, they switched because they were able to earn more on the other platform. Now, we cannot say that these are the workers that have these pure monetary motives, because it's also possible that the workers switched because they perceive the fee as unfair. So it's the two, it's monetary motives and or the fairness preferences. However, what we can say for sure is that people that were confronted with a fee and switched to the platform where they could earn the same or even a lower wage, these are the ones that express pure fairness preferences. And what we do to disentangle switching behaviors or the motives to switch platforms, we subtract the 21 from the 78, which leads us to the finding that if a platform introduces a fee, the majority of workers, so 58%, they switch because of monetary motives, but 21% they switch because they show these pure fairness preferences. And I can understand if you told me now, okay, Lisa, I totally buy the story with the monetary motives, but with the fairness preferences, I'm not so sure about. So let me try to convince you. After the experiment, we, as I said, people were asked to fill in a questionnaire, and we asked them about their main reasons to switch. So we provided basically a range of reasons. So for example, I was curious, or I had a low rating, or I perceived the fee increase as unfair. And we asked them to rank the reasons in order of importance. So what I did afterwards is that basically ran a probit regression where we analyzed, so the dependent variable is switching, so did the people switch yes or no, and I basically created dummy variables. So if the reason was ranked among the top 3 reasons, because we really wanted to make sure that the reason why the people switched was sufficiently strong, then basically the dummy variable is coded 1, and otherwise it's 0. And what we find is, yes, that people do really switch because of the fairness preferences and also because they earn a higher wage. And of course, we also did a subsample analysis only with the people where we say, okay, these are the ones with the pure fairness preferences. And here we also find that, yes, perceiving the fee significantly increased the switching. Now we also have some additional findings. I don't want to go into too much detail because I also think that I'm running out of time, but let me give you some more information. So what, in terms of working conditions, I said in the beginning that the workers do face precarious conditions most of the times. And what we can show is that a policy regime with reputation portability might have a good impact on the working conditions in terms of wages, because we find that the portability increases the high quality workers' wages. And we also find that a policy regime with reputation portability may also improve the market quality in general. Now, what do we mean with that? So given the current scenario where we have platform-specific reputation mechanisms, if I'm a worker and I build up a reputation on platform A, but it's a very poor reputation, I might not care so much, so I might switch to the other platform and start over. However, if we consider a mandatory portability regime, this is not easily done. So the market will directly have or directly know about the quality, which of course is also might also be very favorable for the other platforms in the markets when new workers basically enter these platforms. However, it also shows that before we implement something like reputation portability, it is very, very important that we make sure that the reputation mechanisms or the systems, that they really do reflect the workers' quality and that they're not biased in any direction. Then what we also find is that except for the workers that do or did express the pure monetary motives, the workers performed more poorly after they endured a fee. And I mean, by our definition, for example, if someone expressed pure fairness preferences, switching basically, people had to switch the platform. So they switched to a new platform and they basically still decreased their performance. What might also be very interesting to keep in mind that even if we consider mandatory reputation portability, the workers were less likely to switch in a situation with differing fees. So we also basically analyzed if we not only have a fee introduction, but we also increase the fees. And we found that, okay, if the workers are on the platform after the first fee, they are also more likely to stay if they are again confronted by a higher fee. Okay, so let me conclude. What our study shows is that online labor markets can capitalize on lock-in effects in the absence of reputation portability. And we show that workers switch because of monetary motives, but also because of these fairness preferences. And I mean, they are willing to basically lose on money given the situation they're already in. And workers respond with a lower performance after a fee introduction, typically. When we consider a policy regime with mandatory portability, we find that this might be a valuable tool for workers to evade capitalization by platforms and also improve their online working conditions in terms of wages. And as I said, this might be particularly important in online labor markets where the workers do rely heavily on their ratings and also face the precarious working conditions. So having said that, thank you so much for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to the questions that you have.